Halito, and welcome to Let's Talk with myself, Regan DeLoggins, and John Kane.
Hey, it's great to be back on the air
We
in
are going to be,
WBAI.
oh,
Look, I want to tough times going on all over. I mean, what we're seeing in New York is just incredible. I know there are all those who out there who are trying to call for calm, especially after the elevated charges against the killer of George Floyd and the added charges against his accomplices. But here's the problem that I have, and Regan, you have been there in the thick of this. How do we ignore the fact that police departments in New York City and all over, and frankly all over the country, have just demonstrated over and over and over again their abuse of force and violence against people? I mean, I it seems like for every time I see the police abusing people, peaceful protesters for the most part, it just convinces me more that there's a need for protest.
I totally agree. And I definitely want to start off um, by saying the names of the people that were murdered by police within the past week, which include Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tony McCade, David McGatty, Nina Pop, and numerous others that whose names haven't been released yet. This is just the tip of the iceberg of the number of specifically Black people shot and murdered by police across the country. This isn't just the Minneapolis thing. This isn't just a New York City thing. This is systematic, strategic, and it's systematic and strategic racism throughout all of the occupied United States, perpetrated by all police.
Yeah, and the worst part is that there are those and in many offices, including the presidency and governors and mayors, that are trying to call the situation in Minneapolis just a case of bad apples, or even in Staten Island with the killing of Eric Garner, the idea that it was just bad actors. But what has been proven out over the last several half a week anyway is that no, this is the system. This is the police violence and the use of violence against. Look, I saw, I saw an 8-year-old get sprayed in the face with pepper spray. I saw, not just men but women
Yeah.
being knocked off their feet by these roided up New York City police officers with lieutenants. I mean, so those were the guys in blue, and there's guys with white shirts on who are either lieutenants or captains or something, and they're oblivious to the violence that's going on. I watched these guys run people over with their cars, and going by a protester and throw their door open to door somebody. I mean, some of the ridiculous things that you've seen on video. But you know what I haven't seen, Regan? I have not seen any cops stop a rioter. I haven't seen a cop stop somebody who was smashing a window. I haven't seen. All I've seen are videos after video after video of officers really attacking in any number of ways peaceful protesters.
You know, I think there's a couple of things that we need to discuss. And first, it's I've been out every day with people on the streets, and most people are peaceful, and even if they aren't, they have a right in their rage, and their rage is justified. Their violence is justified. I don't, I think looting is justified. I don't care about capitalism. And personally, as I said last week and will say again, we don't mourn broken windows. And all of these retailers can, especially these big box retailers, they have the ability to restock. There will be, it's not like CVS Pharmacy or Target are going to have a huge financial loss because people go in and take things that um, are reallocating needs, funds, clothing, whatever it may be. So I think that's an important thing to discuss. But beyond that, I've been on the streets every day, and the amount of violence that's being perpetrated by NYPD is baffling, especially because all of these protests are in relation to police violence, specifically the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. These are people that were, you know, just grotesquely murdered. George Floyd's murder caught on camera, and we are taking to the streets for the to request the dismantling and the defunding of police nationwide. And some people may think that that is an absurd ask, but I remind folks that the police are a relatively new organization within the history of the United States, of the occupied United States. They were created as part of slave patrols in order to hunt down enslaved people. And once Reconstruction hit in the late 1860s, slave patrols were reorganized through and were created into police departments, which often worked with the KKK as a means of continued violence and oppression. From that point, we then had in larger urban cities, police departments were created. People were, what's the word I'm looking for? Were procured out of poor white neighborhoods in order to move up in the system and were therefore trained to become police. The rhetoric of racism and violence within the creation of the police is inherent, and therefore there is no way to, there's no such thing as a good cop. We can't remove racism from the police department without dismantling all police departments. The amount of violence that we're seeing on the street is, it's incredible. I can't, honestly, I don't understand how cops, especially in the day and age with cameras everywhere, everyone has a smartphone, everyone has social media. We are just elevating and highlighting the continued violence that they are perpetrating on protesters, whether peaceful or not. I myself was pepper sprayed this week when trying to provide space for other people that were being pepper sprayed, trying to participate in medic-based training. There is no differentiation. Cops are not looking at people and trying to differentiate.
Yeah, the whole thing, and I think it's important to let me back up just a little bit. The creation of police, while you're absolutely right about slave patrols, but more generally, it was about protecting the property, and that included slaves. I mean, the whole idea that these legions of men were put into service to protect the property of the white elite. Because let's face it, it was only wealthier white people that had property, and I mean personal goods. I mean, protect their homes, protect, again, their personal property. And among that personal property, of course, were slaves. And that's why these police, these legions of licensed with rubber bullets or those concussion grenades. Look, I want to back up to Standing Rock a little bit. We saw that violence that was used in Standing Rock, and we know that most of those non-lethal weapons that the police and Morton County sheriffs and others were using, they were using inappropriately. They were actually defying the instructions. Many of those things, those projectiles, were only supposed to be used at the closest range that their recommended use was 10 meters, which is over 30 feet. We see these guys are being shot with rubber bullets almost at point blank range. Tear gas canisters are not supposed to be shot at people. Concussion grenades are not supposed to be shot at people. These are the things they're doing. And as far as pepper spray, the idea of pepper spraying children, it's a chemical weapon, for Christ's sake. And so tear gas and pepper spray is a chemical weapon. And in the United States, it is perfectly legal for these cops to use this stuff. And, so and I agree with you. The level of violence that we've seen, and of course, New York City police are right at the top of the list. But you can go everywhere, every city that including Washington D.C. I mean, you saw police department after police department after police department, and what it does is it gives a full testimony to what you're saying here is that the problem is the police department, the structure. It's systemic, and you know we talk about racism and the targeting of black men and that kind of thing, but it's actually, and it is that, but it's bigger than that. The level of white supremacy that exists in this law enforcement in police departments is such that white supremacy ends up turning into a license to commit violence against anyone who's not a police officer. I mean, what you saw happening to reporters, even the white ones, because you know what? They perceived anybody who was on the street as their enemy. Not anybody. They didn't perceive anybody on the street as people that they had any responsibility to. No, they certainly had gone well beyond this idea of protecting even their original mandate to protect property. They were just there to hurt people and to dominate people, which is the exact word that Donald Trump used. He wanted these police forces to to demonstrate dominance over the will of people, over the freedom of people. And and I gotta throw this one in there: curfews. I don't know if you are an activist. I don't know how you abide by curfews. If somebody tells you to go in at 8:00 and you say, "Okay, I'm going to go in at 8:00," then damn it, you shouldn't have been out there in the first place. As far as I'm concerned, one of the smallest things that you can do in terms of a demonstration of resistance is not go in when they tell you to go in. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
I would, there's a couple of things. While being on the streets, um, I have seen cops pull guns out on peaceful protesters for breaking curfew. I have seen I've seen people arrested for breaking curfew and being charged with misdemeanors. I've seen I saw a cop car drive into a crowd and literally run people over. I saw a cop billy clubbed one of my very good friends right in the head. And they immediately started bleeding, and we had to get them out of we had to do as much as we could to get them out of there. I have seen these atrocities firsthand, and unfortunately also been the victim to these. And it's just a reminder that there is no control, there is no editing done by cops in moments of panic or in moments of, as you said, domination. Instead of holding any sort of restraint, there is no restraint. Even when folks are requesting for them to step back, for cops to step back because they're impeding on our space in a time of COVID-19, they're not. I've seen cops purposefully sneeze and cough on people without masks on. I've seen it. It happened to me. I've seen cops pull down their masks and spit at people during a time of COVID-19. These are things that are happening. We can't make this up because it's the reality. There is a sense of vengeance and violence that the NYPD is perpetrating against us. It's an incredible exercise of white supremacy. It's an incredible exercise of entitlement, and it's an incredible exercise of violence. And for folks that are like, oh, it's, they're doing their job, I'm pretty sure that being spit on by a cop is not in their job description. I'm pretty sure. I know it's not. I've been scanning over police protocols for the past couple of days, and almost every protocol that I have read, I have witnessed it being broken. These trainings that they are, provided or have to go through are not being exercised. This is just a free-for-all for a bunch of cops to do whatever they want and without any sort of repercussions.
Well, and I mentioned this on the last show. I still don't understand how it is legal in any sense of the word for a cop to inflict any trauma on a person's, especially on a person's head, face, or neck. I mean, look, if you need to arrest somebody, if you need to push somebody back, the idea of clubbing somebody in the face, breaking teeth, and like one of the cops was written up for in Minneapolis in the George Floyd murder. The idea of breaking out somebody's teeth or busting their orbital sockets, or using those rubber bullets shooting people in the face, which is prohibited. The idea that they do this stuff, I mean, this stuff should be clearly mandated, and it's not enough to say, okay, we're going to say this stranglehold is no longer legal, because obviously that doesn't matter. It certainly didn't matter to in the Eric Garner case. There has to be punishment, and there has to be accountability and repercussions when these police. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. This isn't about using measured force of any type to subdue a crowd. This is about inflicting punishment on people. These guys are at that moment are the judge and the jury and the hangman at the same time. They are committing the acts of violence. They are administering corporal punishment, which means beating the body, and capital punishment, which means beating the head. I mean, the reason they say capital punishment is like an execution is because it's removing the head. But you know what? If you're beating somebody about the head, by definition, getting back to the Latin root words of where corporal and capital come from, I mean, it's the whole idea of beating the head. So when you choke somebody, even if you want to claim, oh, I was just trying to subdue them. Even in the UFC, mixed martial arts, when somebody puts a chokehold on you, you tap their arm and they let go. You tap their arm and they let go. But not with the police. They will actually choke. And and look, it's even different. And I'm not saying it's better, but when a cop pulls a trigger and their excuse or their justification or whatever else is that, well, I made a split-second decision, for better or worse, and I perceived a threat, and that's where that split-second decision. Well, when you choke the life out of somebody, that's not a split-second decision. That is a malicious, violent act that you are sustaining for a long enough period of time to kill somebody, whether it's Eric Garner or whether it's George Floyd. And so, I mean, this is, and I'm not saying killing somebody, strangling somebody is worse than shooting somebody, but for the person who's actually doing it, you have to have a real darkness in your heart to physically and beat or strangle the life out of somebody. And that's just plain twisted. That's just plain twisted.
I would also I would also advocate that people listening to this, just Google image search what rubber bullets look like. I think a lot of people have a very naive understanding of what the weaponry that's being used against us looks like. And rubber bullets aren't like paintball gun size little like circular orbs that are shot into the crowd. They are very large. They're almost they're usually a couple inches long, and they come out the same trajectory and force as being shot out of a quote unquote regular gun. Mm-hmm. They are not meant to be and should not be aimed at the head, but multiple people have been shot in the head by rubber bullets. And actually on Saturday, one of the protesters in the Fairfax district of LA was shot in the head by a rubber bullet and has been in the ICU since. In 2017, there was a peer-reviewed medical journal report that came out of the BMJ that found that 15% of 2,000 of people who were shot by rubber bullets were injured permanently with medical issues that would then have repercussions for the rest of their lives. So when people are like, oh, they're just rubber bullets, I need folks to understand that rubber bullets cause a huge amount of damage. And also rubber bullets have murdered people before. There's a huge consequence to just being shot by a rubber bullet. Also, tear gas and pepper. Actually, just to back up a little bit, I released a zine 2 days ago, a self-published zine on chemical attack safety because there was so much misinformation going around about tear gas and pepper spray in particular. And so I compiled a document that has all of the information as to what they are. There is a difference between pepper spray and tear gas, and what to do when you are in contact with either. And the reason I did that was because when I was pepper sprayed this week, I was lucky enough to know that what to do, but there were so many people that did not know what to do. And therefore, writing it down and making a free resource was incredibly important. Now, especially considering that tear gas and pepper sprays are being used in combination by the NYPD at multiple sites of protests. So for folks that may not know what to do, there are resources out there, including the one that I wrote, but there are resources out there. And before you go out on the streets, Google what to do when you're pepper sprayed. Google what to do when you're tear gassed. They can be honestly life-saving in a lot of ways, but also there's so much misinformation out there on how to handle the different chemical attacks that are used. This is chemical warfare. This is chemical attacks. I don't think people understand how the gravity of what it looks like for cops to approach a crowd, drop tear gas, pepper spray, and shoot them with rubber bullets. This is an incredible act of violence, especially in a time of a pandemic where pepper spray and tear gas both have affect the lungs, the mucous membranes in particular.
Yeah, we don't have
And
a lung
when
thing
you
going
are
around or
pepper
anything.
sprayed or tear, yeah, it's not like we have the pandemic happening right now that is related to our lungs. Like it's incredible to see that these kinds of acts of violence and chemical warfare are used in the city that has the highest COVID contraction rate still.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing that bothers me. The mayors are responsible, the governors are responsible, and the president is responsible because at some point, these police departments, regardless whether they are city police, whether they're county sheriffs, or whether they are state police, they are answerable, and there are people who have the authority to tell them what limits they are permitted, especially in these kind of crowd control circumstances. So the idea that again, these agents, these chemical agents that hurt the lungs and hurt the eyes and hurt the vital parts of human life are not only permitted but are being abused. And I haven't heard anybody. I haven't heard De Blasio come out. I do know a couple of police officers in Atlanta got reprimanded or fired or something along those lines for, I think, because they dragged somebody out of their car. They tased this guy over and over again and his wife, and then they dragged him out and beat him. And the cops came up and the first thing they did was start beating on his car. They punctured his front tires. I mean, the amount of abuse and again, violence, absolute vandalizing of the guy's car. And those cops got in trouble to whatever that means. But you've seen it over and over in every city: Detroit, in Los Angeles, in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C. I mean, in D.C., this pathetic photo op that Trump dictated he wanted, and he wanted to do it so he could somehow, demonstrate his authority. A bunch of peaceful protesters ended up being attacked, and they had no idea why. They didn't know what was going on. Nobody ever said you need to clear the street, and there was no Secret Service. This was just aggressive cops attacking people so Trump could walk down the street and take a picture with a Bible. I mean, absurd. Just absurd.
Yeah. I also want folks to know that on June 1st in San Leandro, California, a pregnant woman was taken to the ground and stomped so violently on her stomach by cops that it caused a miscarriage. And she is now taking a lawsuit has been filed against these police officers, and there was even an image circulating of her stomach with a shoe print on it.
Jesus.
And yeah, so even though this happened, this particular incident happened last year, the lawsuit has been refiled, which I think is important, great, and it's relevant for folks to understand that there is a legacy of violence. This isn't just happening now. This didn't start with George Floyd. This has been happening, and it's not, a lot of the times we don't see the names released into the public. A lot of the times we don't have camera footage of people being mishandled, being pulled out of their cars and tased, being choked to death by cops. A lot of the time there aren't videos. So if you at any point have been violently reprimanded, have been a victim of police brutality, know that you are not alone. And even if it wasn't on camera or there were no witnesses, you have the right and should look to create a legal process in which you receive any sort of support, even if it doesn't go to court, even if it doesn't, I don't love the court system. I don't believe in this justice system, but we need to start creating as much paperwork. There needs to be a paper trail so that folks understand that there is a legacy happening, that there are so many people that have been victims of police violence, police brutality, that their experience was not caught on camera. Right. Start writing it down. Start reporting it. Create this timeline. Create the paperwork. Go through a bureaucratic process, not because we will find justice in it, but rather so that folks can look back and see that there is a legacy of violence.
It's got to be documented.
There are so many.
I mean, if you document it, and especially when a police officer ends up having this paper trail of documented abuse. So I think it is important, and it is frustrating because we know by and large. Look, I'm not even convinced that these guys in Minneapolis will be convicted. I mean, just because seeing how this system works. I mean, or that it doesn't work. I mean, it's hard to be, and the fact that they charged these guys, and now the other three, and immediately the media started playing it up like, okay, now the riots can stop, and what the hell did you just witness and cover for 4 freaking days? And you think because they're at least going to indict and charge these guys, that everybody should be satisfied? That's what happened in Baltimore, right? After Freddie Gray. Once the prosecutor indicted him, all of a sudden everybody stopped. And then, of course, they weren't convicted. They were all acquitted. I mean, and of course, they first charged them, and then they dropped the charges on 3 of them. So this idea that this is being done almost for optics, like we were saying in the beginning, the idea of some of these police departments taking a knee with the protesters, yeah, for that moment, but some of those same police officers will cover for if they don't perpetrate these acts of violence. They certainly don't stand up. I've never seen a cop stop another cop from committing an act of violence. I've never seen it. And for all the videos that are out there you were talking about, we do live in an age where we can document all the stuff. And look, I'm not saying you don't see a cop smiling every once in a while, or maybe, dance with somebody or shoot a basketball, but I've never seen one stop an act of violence by a fellow police officer. Never seen it happen.
We've also seen police officers take a knee and then within minutes stand up and shoot people in the crowd with rubber bullets.
Yeah, there you go.
These
There
are
you go.
performative. This is this is meant to be propaganda. This is meant to make people feel comfortable so that they can be attacked. I don't care if a cop takes a knee. If you have an issue with what's happening, if you see this and if you actually are an accomplice to this, then quit your day job. There is no reason for you to be a cop. There is absolutely no reason. If you actually are in solidarity with people who are angry, who are in pain, who are victims of this systemic racism, if you are actually in solidarity with them as a cop, then you shouldn't be a cop anymore.
Right.
I'm incredibly angered by the amount of cops I see who take a knee and then within the next breath push someone to the ground and sends them to the hospital for because they hit their head so hard on the pavement that they now have seizures, which has happened multiple times within these protests in multiple different states. So this take a knee or hug a protester, this isn't real. This is performative. That's just a performative allyship to placate their guilt.
Right.
Quit your day job.
I agree. Hey, we're a little past the bottom of the hour. Let's take a break. We'll let Reggie play a tune, and we'll come right back. And I'm gonna do a little pitch for WBAI, but I want to get back into this because there's still more ground to cover here, and we can't let this go. So let's take a break, and we'll be right back. This is John Kane with Regan and John. This is Let's Talk.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Let's Talk with John Kane and Regan DeLoggins. That's me. We are talking about, for content warning, we are talking about continued police brutality during this time of unrest, civil disobedience, and righteous anger. John, I just want to make sure that you are here and we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm here. Before we get back into it, though, let me remind people we are almost always at some level in a fund drive, but we are in a fund drive right now. And I do want to remind people that our show does need to be supported. The station does need to be supported. When you support Let's Talk, you are essentially supporting the station, but you're also sending a message to the station that this is one of the programs that you support the station for. So if you go to the pledge line, which is how can I not be ready for the pledge line? It is 516-620-3602. If you go to that pledge line, 516-620-3602, you can make a donation, a one-time donation. You can become a BAI buddy, but you can do it in the name of this show. And again, it's important that you do that because that's how you tell management, that's how you tell Pacifica that this is one of the important shows that you listen to. Look, I'm not offering premiums or gifts. You know, we're doing the best we can, and we're getting through this age of COVID-19, doing remote broadcasts. We're trying to do all that we can, and so the program is the premium. So we're asking you to make a donation, make a one-time donation, give what you can. I know, look, the economy is in a shambles, along with obviously social unrest and political unrest and a global pandemic. We realize all that, but if you do have the resources, if you can make a donation, please do go to the pledge line 516-620-3602. You can go online. You can go to www.give2wbai.org. That's GIVE, the number 2, WBAI.org. And again, you can make a one-time donation. You become a BAI buddy. You know, being a native, this whole BIA thing is always tough. WBAI.org. And you can actually, if you go on the website, you can even follow the prompts to do a text donation. So I ask that you do that. The money does not go to Regan. It does not go to me. It doesn't go into Reggie's pocket. It goes to WBAI to help keep us on the air in a time where voices like ours and some of the other programs
getting rich off of this.
Yeah, nobody. We're trying to keep from drowning is about what it amounts to. So please do go to the pledge line 516-620-3602. That's the number to call to make a donation to WBAI and do it in the name of Let's Talk with John Kane and Regan John. All right. We did talk about so much in the first half, and again, I think it's really important that while now you're starting to hear voices suggesting, oh, there needs to be calm. Look, they indicted the officers, and now it's time to settle down. The bizarre part of that whole, or the absurd part, is we just witnessed every reason to protest. For the last 5 nights, we've seen every reason to protest because of the violence that these police officers. And here's the crazy part: the idea of pushing people off the street. If you are suggesting in any way, shape, or form that you're trying to prevent rioting, well, why would you be pushing people off the street and onto the sidewalks where the windows are? I don't see anybody lining up to protect buildings and windows or anything else. I just see people being abused, and I'm with you, Regan. I have no problem with riots. I have no problem with broken windows. I have no problem with burnt out police departments or police cars or any of that stuff. And if you and for anybody who thinks that's outrageous that you and I hold this belief, I'm sorry. I've witnessed what people, including Native people and Black people, people of color, have gone through their entire lives, and how much they've been on the short end of every stick that there possibly could be. And so all of this isn't just because of George Floyd. This is a culmination of violence after violence, murder after murder after murder. Like I said, Native people lead in death by cop as a proportion of our population in every age group except for 16 to 22. Native people. I mean, so it isn't just Black people who are being killed. In fact, there are white people being killed, but proportionate to our population, it's Native people and Black people who are killed at the highest levels. And because there was the good fortune to have this terrible video taken, so these cops could not lie, because their words are going to be taken over anybody else's words unless the video absolutely conflicts with their with what their account is. And every time, look, these guys get together and corroborate their story. I mean, any other person who is accused of something is immediately separated, so they can't put their story together. Police officers, they're given all the time in the world to make sure that they all say the same thing and they give the same account. They get spoon fed the lie that they have to put in their reports. And you know what? These freaking police unions, I support the idea of union labor, but not for these police departments. These are just advocates for violence. Every one of these police union organizations are just advocates for police abuse. They don't think there's ever a time that a police officer should be reprimanded for killing somebody, whether they choke the life out of them, whether whether they strangle them, whether they shoot them, whether they run them over with a car, whatever they do. They don't think there's ever a time that a police officer is in the wrong, and that's a real problem. But as I said before the break, I'm sorry, Bill de Blasio, that is your police department. Andrew Cuomo, it is your state police that are involved in these things too. Keep in mind, in New York City, they have a police department that's the size of a small army. And actually, it's not even that small army. It's like 30,000 police officers, New York City police. And then you add sheriffs, and you add other village police, and you add state police, and of course, then you add in some of the other police departments, like the Metro Police and all these other police departments. And I got to ask another question: is there any reason for a police officer to wear camouflage uniforms, camouflage fatigues? I mean, do they really think we can't see them when they wear those? I mean, there's only one reason for a police officer to wear camo fatigues, and that is to be more intimidating, to look more militaristic, to look more aggressive, and to look more threatening. Certainly not to instill peace and confidence and safety in anybody. I just don't get it.
There are two things that I want to discuss before we run out of time. And the the first one is that, uh, which I am looking forward to your opinion on this, John. Um, I have been receiving updates from my indigenous kin, Afro-Indigenous kin, that live on the reservations north of Seattle. And after Trump's announcement that he rather not we, but he and the federal government would protect people's Second Amendment rights during these protests. After that announcement was made, carloads of white supremacists showed up at the Tulalip Reservation to loot the gun shops on indigenous land. I have images as well as notes, as well as the emergency text that was sent out by tribal government officials, as, uh, as well as a number of eyewitness testimonies in which the violence that was perpetrated was so intense that the National Guard has been deployed. And you don't see this in the news because it's on indigenous territory. You don't see this in the news because it's against this quote unquote anti-fascist rhetoric that Trump is looking to demonize. But in fact, white supremacists have been going onto indigenous land, onto indigenous reservations to loot our gun stores. This is happening. This has been happening. I'm hoping that there is more media attention that comes out of it. If it doesn't, then I will take it upon myself to make sure that that happens. But this is something that is not being shared or discussed at all. I have images of the National Guard in spaces like Quilceda, like Muckleshoot, like Tulalip, and with white supremacists coming into the area with the intention of removing weaponry. Well, it's incredible that this is not being spoken about.
Well, and the crazy part here is that for all of these white supremacy groups and these militia groups, these Second Amendment, guys who felt like they had to storm state capitals because their freedom was being taken away, but because they were being asked to wear masks, the tyranny that that everybody's witnessing is the tyranny of the police. I haven't seen any of these Second Amendment guys stand up to any police departments. I haven't seen any of them step up. And why? Because half of them are cops. I mean, so the whole idea that these Second Amendment guys who claim that they need to have their Second Amendment rights protected so they can stand up against tyranny, well, they don't. They never do. They're lined up with the aggressive and the abusive police officers. Their whole idea is to arm themselves against people of color, and we see that over and over and over again. And so, I mean, that's again, this just adds to the not just to the rhetoric, but the hypocrisy of any of those people who claim that their Second Amendment rights are so important. And I haven't seen anybody on the street beaten by police officers who was carrying an AR-15 or an AK or a mini -40. I haven't seen anybody carrying assault weapons among these peaceful protesters. The only people who claimed to be peaceful protesters carrying weapons were the ones who were storming state capitals because they wanted haircuts. I mean, it is that absurd. I mean, it is that absurd. But no, I mean, when you consider what excuse me.
Oh, I was saying that's white privilege. That is Absolutely. The epitome of white privilege.
Absolutely. And and again, I got to get back to that point, and that this is about white privilege. It is about white supremacy. And again, that's what you're seeing play out in all of these police departments. Now, when I say that, one of the immediate responses that people say, yeah, but there's some black officers in there. Again, I ask people to look up the doll test, and you look at because the police departments are systemically racist. It doesn't matter that if you're a black officer, because you're going along with the program. You are going along with the racist system that you have now put yourself involved with. I mean, this is part of the reason that I speak out so strongly against Native people jumping into American politics, because you don't you are becoming part of the ruling class, and it's not because you're going to change it for the better for Native people or for I mean, look at how much better things got for black people when Barack Obama was the president. It didn't, and that's exactly the point. So I mean, it is. I think it's really important that people keep the pressure up. You know, if the one parting message that I want to leave here is that the protests need to continue. The standing up to the police officers, and I look, I know I'm not living in New York City. I don't have a police department to stand up against here. I live on a native territory, but I guarantee if if a white supremacy organization comes to Seneca territory, I'll be right on the front line, keeping them out. But I think it's really important that anybody who is outraged over George Floyd, or over Eric Garner, or Freddie Gray, or Senator Bland, or anyone, Tamir Rice, anybody, you should be equally outraged with everything the police departments have done in the last week. And there is no reason to become more peaceful and more calm just because they indicted a few officers in Minneapolis. Because in every police department across the country, we've seen a heightened level of aggression, an abuse of authority, and again, abuse of weaponry. They've turned non-lethal weapons into lethal weapons. I've seen people shot on their own front steps by some of these police departments with rubber bullets, with pepper spray pellets, with concussion grenades, with tear gas canisters. I mean, it is absolutely insane. Look, I really do. I call on the people to stay involved and stay engaged.
Speaking of which, I would advocate anyone listening to please come to our action tonight. FTP4 will take place in the Bronx on 149 and 3rd Ave. Step off is at 6:30. Bring your masks, bring water, bring a snack, wear gloves, practice social distancing. Please educate yourselves about what to do if pepper sprayed or tear gassed. Bring earplugs. They will use loud noises in an attempt to distract. Cover your. Take all the safety precautions that you need to take, but show up. Be there. And if you can't go to the Bronx, there are multiple different actions, vigils, memorials being held throughout the occupied New York City. New York City, occupied New York City, Lenape-Hooking stands with Black lives. So y'all need to show up and be there. And if you can't for whatever reason, please consider donating to multiple different bail funds, including the FTP4 bail fund, which I'm going to pull that up right now so that y'all can do that. The Venmo for that is it's at FTP4 bail fund, all one word. We will need that support tonight. We will need that support moving forward. Please show your support. This is not over, and this will not be over.
And again, Regan, I want to thank you so much. I mean, for being as engaged, being there on the street every night, for putting yourself in harm's way to help other people. Obviously, treat some of the people who need medical assistance and first aid. Again, I want to give you my applause to you, and I want to remind people that this is revolution. This isn't just demonstration. This isn't just protest. This is demanding change, and it doesn't come easy. So, I mean, this isn't something that you can do half-heartedly. We need to be involved. We need to get other people involved, and we need to demand change. I want to remind people again, we are in fund drive mode. I'll give the pledge line number out again. It's 516-620-3602. That's the number to support WBAI and to support Let's Talk with John, Kane, and Regan DeLoggins. It's an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to the New York City listening audience and those who are listening on Facebook and online. What we're witnessing is life changing. And it is a historic moment. Look, the pandemic was historic. The economic collapse is historic, and the social unrest is historic. And again, we are in the driver's seat. The white supremacists are really the minority. They just happen to be in positions of power. The power that we have as people to stand up to this, to stand up to the corruption that is involved with the and that corruption isn't just with the law enforcement. It's not just with the Justice Department. It is the legislative branch, it is the executive branch, and it is the judicial branch. And I'll tell you, you're not going to vote your way out of this, and you're not going to pray your way out of this. We need to take action and demand change, not hope for change. Demand change. That's my thought. That's my thoughts. Regan, any last thoughts before we bug out to the news?
No, well, I guess so. Just get out there, y'all. Black Lives Matter. That is what this is about. That is what this will continue to be about. We are there for our Afro-Indigenous, Afro-Caribbean, Black kin, and you should be too.
Yep, stand up to white supremacy, folks. You have to be against, you have to be an anti-racist, not just claim that you aren't racist. That's it.